When I left you Saturday, we had just finished exploring the very first cemetery in Apopka, Florida, the Apopka Church Cemetery. It's where so much of the city's story began. We walked through time together from the very first marked grave to the last person laid to rest in this historic grounds. We talked about names that helped shape the area, families who planted roots, built homes and churches, and lived, loved, and were remembered in stone. There was another cemetery, just as old, born around the same time as the first, a resting place for a community whose stories were often overlooked, and not because they didn't matter, but because history chose not to write them down. Finding information about this place isn't easy. There aren't pages of records or tidy family plots with names etched deep into the granite. Instead, there's weathered markers, lost stones, and names remembered mostly through oral history. And that makes you wonder why. The answer lies just beyond a gorge, the remnant of an old railroad line that once cut through the land. That deep wound in the earth isn't just a natural feature, it's a dividing line. On one side stood the Apopka Church Cemetery, resting place of some of the town's earliest settlers. On the other side, the Edgewood Greenwood Cemetery, there's an entirely different story that unfolds. That gorge, in its silence, speaks volumes. It's a reminder of the separation that existed here, not just in geography, but in opportunity and recognition, and in a way history was remembered or forgotten. Today we're crossing that gorge. We're stepping into the story of Edgewood Greenwood Cemetery, a place that deserves to be seen, remembered, and honored just as much as any other place in Apopka's past. This section of the cemetery is called the Old Cemetery on the Edgewood Greenwood map. Back in 2011, when my first family member was laid to rest here, this was my favorite section to wander through. The handmade headstones stood out, rough edges, uneven letters. Sometimes they looked handwritten, but they were full of heart. They weren't mass-produced or polished. They were personal. They were love poured into concrete. Among those stones, there were blank spaces too. Quiet patches of ground where you know someone rests, but their names are gone. Or maybe they were never marked at all. That's what planted an idea in my head, a dream that I still carry. I wanted to start a nonprofit that would help people mark unmarked graves, to go through cemetery records, find those missing names, and give them back their place in the world. I wanted to call it the Black Stone Society. The idea was simple, a place that would place a single black stone for every unmarked grave, engraved with whatever information that could be found, even if it was just a name and a year, a reminder that someone cared for them enough to remember them. But dreams like that take more than just the idea. It takes money and more time than I have. I even called the city once to see if there was anything I could legally do on my own. The answer, unfortunately, was no. So I still dream, and while I dream, I walk, and I talk to the ones who have no names left, the ones whose stones are fading, the ones whose loved ones no longer visit. The love is only visible through hands that once made it. The concrete, the handwriting, the way the family plots are edged with cinder blocks, these are the details that pull me in. It's everything I love about southern cemeteries. I didn't know much about Edgewood Greenwood back then, and I had no idea how deep its history ran, or who all rested here. I just knew that part of the grounds felt alive, shaded, peaceful, and wild in all the right ways. This area, it sings. It says, "Come visit, stay a while, remember us." As often as I sit beneath these trees and talk to the dead, they've never been able to tell me their stories. I've asked so many times, but silence is always what answers back. When I decided to dig into the cemetery for the month of October, I was excited. I thought, finally, I'll get to learn something about this section. This place that's always felt different on the map. It's just an open space labeled old cemetery. That's it. No details, no clues, just blankness. Then I found a single, powerful line buried in a document, and it said, to the north, separated by the former railroad grade, lies the Black Cemetery, historically segregated. That was it. That was all that was said. No list of names, no stories of families, no mention of who they were, what they did, or how they helped shape the Apopka. Just that one sentence. And I remember sitting there thinking, okay, but who were they? What did they build? What lives did they live? Why can't I know their names too? I searched for more books, records, maps, anything, and I found almost nothing. Why? Why can't I read full genealogies and family histories of those buried at the Apopka Church Cemetery? People who lived on the other side of the railroad line, but not here. And the answer hit me like a gut punch. Racism. Of course. That's the reason. This side of the gorge, this side of the town, was where the Black community buried their dead. The people who worked, who built, who prayed, who loved, but weren't considered worth documenting by the people writing history. The other side got marble. This side got silence. And that silence says everything about the time, the place, and the priority of those who recorded the past. So now I ask myself, how do I find them? How do I uncover the stories of the people of color who built Apopka just as surely as those resting up on the hill? Because they're here, they mattered, and they deserve to be remembered. I kept thinking about that line, separated by a former railroad grade. At first I thought the divide must have been somewhere far away, but the truth is it wasn't beyond anything. It was right here in the heart of Apopka. There was a place called Mead's Bottom. People don't talk about it much now, but it once pulsed with life. Families lived there. Children played there. It wasn't a faraway settlement. It was right here in the center of everything. Yet somehow it became invisible. The people who called it home until the 1960s, the people who built, worked, prayed, and raised families, their names slipped through the cracks of history. You won't find Mead's Bottom in many records. There is a mural now, but it's just whispers, stories passed down, memories fading, like the writing on those handmade stones. And that's what gets me every time. This wasn't a separate corner or a forgotten field. It was the heart of Apopka, the heartbeat of a community that was every bit as real and as vital as the one recorded in history. To think that a place could be so full of life, so close to everything, and still be erased. That's the story that hurts to tell, and the reason that it has to be told. After I read that one short line, separated by the former railroad grade lies the Black Cemetery, historically segregated, I couldn't let it go. I started searching furiously, Googling, digging through archives, old maps, anything that might give me a clue of who was here. But the more I searched, the less I found. Then I remembered there's a small museum right here in town, the Museum of Apopkans. So I went there. I started asking questions, hoping that someone could point me to the early Black pioneers who might be buried here. They didn't have the answers, but they did have a small book, a collection of short biographies about notable Black residents who helped build Apopka from the ground up. I bought it, I brought it home, and I read it. And that night I sat down with my laptop and that little tiny book, determined to finally put names to this place. I found a lot that were here, but they were newer. They weren't the originators. They weren't the pioneers. And then I read the pages, one after the other, and two names stopped me cold: Anthony Fraser and Joseph Robards, sometimes listed as Joseph Roberts. I knew those names, not from this cemetery, but from my research into the Apopka Church Cemetery, the one up on the hill. Anthony Fraser was a freed slave who fought for the Union Army. After the war, he served on a road commission alongside a white man named William Delk, the same man who had once claimed ownership of him. Then there was Joseph Robard, Anthony's half-brother. Their mother was the same, but Joseph's father was William Delk, a mixed-race man who had to ask permission at just 18 years old from his own father, the man who had enslaved his family, to join the Union Army. Neither of them rest here. Anthony's grave was found buried deep underground years later, unearthed only by road work in the nearby town of Plymouth. Joseph's resting place is said to be in Mount Dora, but you won't find it listed anywhere online. Not in Find a Grave, not in genealogies, nowhere. In fact, I couldn't find a single grave from the early generation of Black pioneers listed anywhere in Apopka. Page after page, name after name, no markers, no records, no graves. It's as if they simply disappeared from history. And that absence says everything about how incomplete the story still is. But among all those missing names, one stood out, one that whispered back to me. Her name was Sarah Mead. After the Civil War in 1865, any freed men and women could travel, and they did travel across the South looking for a place to start over, to build lives that were finally their own. Some found work on railroads or in turpentine camps. Others took to farming, hoping that ownership of land could mean freedom that couldn't be taken away. Sarah Mead was one of them. She was born into slavery in South Carolina in 1836 and sold to a plantation owner in Georgia. She remained enslaved until the end of the war, sometime around 1870. She and her husband, Lindsay Mead, made their way south to Apopka. They settled in a stretch of land that would one day bear her name, Mead's Bottom. It was located right in the heart of town, just south of Highway 441 and 436, bordered by McGee Street and west of Sheila Road on the east. Sarah wasn't just settling for herself, she was helping others. She welcomed early Black settlers into the area. She offered temporary housing and supplies and helped them establish farms and homesteads. She told them that in Apopka there was land to work, land to own, and a chance to build something lasting. And they did. For decades, Mead's Bottom was a vibrant, diverse community where Black and white families lived and worked side by side, well into the early 1960s. That's the part of history that's easy to forget, the part that doesn't make it into most books, but it's the heartbeat of what Apopka was and still is, a place built by hands that history tried to erase. Sarah Mead's story is proof that even when names are lost, their legacy lingers. In the ground beneath us, in the walls that we live in, everywhere, their legacy is there. In every unmarked grave, in every quiet corner of the old cemetery. And that's why this place calls to me the way that it does. Because even without a headstone, even without knowing where her grave is, Sarah Mead's spirit is still here, reminding us that the forgotten deserve to be found. I tried to honor this historically bad bitch, but I don't know if I did justice to her. Her spirit is here for me. I will say her name into the wind, Sarah Mead, into the trees, into the hush that hangs over this place. She's the voice in my ear reminding me that the forgotten deserve to be found, even if all we can find is their history. She's proof that you don't have to have a headstone to leave a legacy. You have to just know that you mattered. And she did. So this quiet walk, this digging in, this remembering, it's for her and for every other name that never made it into the record books. Every blank space still whispers here. We were here. There's no way to know how many people are buried in this section. The records don't tell us that at all, and the ground keeps its secrets well. What I do know is this. I've seen metal funeral markers out here that date as recently as the 1990s. 1997, I believe, was the latest. Those markers were meant to be temporary, but they become permanent by default, by lack of money, by lack of resources, by lack of time. Day by day, that metal bends, it rusts, it falls, it gets hidden by weed eaters. Some of them are already broken. Others lie face down in the grass without the names attached anymore. And when those are gone, those names will be quiet too. That's why I dream even harder about the Black Stone Society, the dream of marking every unmarked grave with something that will last. A black stone engraved with a name, a date, a proof of life, and the color black so it stands out in nature. That black on green just draws the attention, and these people deserve attention. One day maybe I'll have the time, the money, the resources to make that dream real. Or maybe someone else will hear this and decide to do it for themselves. But for now, I visit. I stand in the quiet. I say their names out loud. These people resting in the earth. They had stories. They mattered. They still matter. And I hope that somewhere, someone is still writing down those stories, refusing to let them be lost too. I hope people visit the mural that honors Mead's bottom. I'll be posting a video about that later. Until then, thanks for listening to me talk to myself and ramble a lot. If you like, press like. If you want to subscribe for more, please do. And until then, wander often, wonder always, and stay safe on them back roads.